is Jen Wilson, and I want to welcome you to our first episode of Your Weekly Woo Woo, which is a show that I'm so excited to be a host of. It is essentially a show where we are going to have a conversation about how we fit into the universe and all of the things that go along with that. We call it woo-woo. Some people call it airy-fairy, some people call it esoteric, some people call it metaphysical. I call it woo-woo. So that is what we're going to do. We are going to talk every week about the woo-woo. And my favorite piece of woo-woo is astrology. So with that said, I'd like to introduce you to our resident astrologer, Lauren Maxwell Matthews.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, so she is going to be here with us every week. What, Lauren, is astrology?
Astrology at the most basic level is the study of energies. It's how we interpret the planets, the stars, all of these moving heavenly bodies, and see how they manifest in one physical living being on Earth or in our species as a whole. But it's definitely coming through the lens of the planet Earth, which is why astrology on Earth would not be the same as astrology on Mars or on Uranus or any of these other planets. But in turn, these planets come back to us and they all affect us. So when we look at astrology, we are talking about you as an individual and how all of these planets are manifesting for you.
So with Halloween, though, let's talk about astrology. Halloween falls in the sign of Scorpio.
Yes, in Scorpio, when people hear Scorpio, they think of sex and they think of death. So it's pretty understandable why this holiday that we associate with being the time when the dead and the living are maybe the closest together occurs under the sign of Scorpio.
It's the sign of death and sex, essentially. Yes. But I have got to believe there's more to it than just that.
There's so much more. It's really about transformation. It's about merging of resources. Marriage always comes up when you start talking about Scorpio. Scorpio is a very, very intense sign. That's why it deals with subjects like sex and death, because let's face it, who doesn't end up getting a little bit nervous about these topics, at least at one point in their life?
Okay, so if we were to look at the chart of Halloween up here, that's who they are?
That is who they are. Of course, depending on exactly where and what time they're born, it's going to be different. That changes something that we call the houses, which we'll go into a little bit later.
Future shows.
But yes, on the most basic level, these are the energies that person would have to contend with. We have a stellium going on in Scorpio. That's all those planets at the top right there that are sitting next to each other.
So Scorpio's the one straight up top, correct?
Scorpio's the one straight up top. When you see a bunch of planets all sitting in the same place like that, what we end up getting is something called a stellium, and that means that there's a huge concentration of energy. Now, Scorpio is some pretty intense energy. So when one of the planets that we've got right there, Saturn, is kind of like a teacher, you don't want to mess with Saturn. Saturn does not let you pull one over on him. He'll punish you for it. So if you're going to go out and you're going to do stuff, don't drink and drive. Make sure that you get a DD, something like that. It doesn't mean you can't have fun. It just means that you can't have irresponsible fun. And there's definitely a difference.
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Unfortunately, Halloween is kind of the poster child for irresponsible fun. It really is.
It is. And there are some Halloweens where you can get away with that. I'm just saying this might not be one of them.
This is not one of them. Okay, so we've got other planets, it looks like, in that stellium. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, you are.
So what other issues do we have up there?
We've got the Sun, Mercury, and something called the North Node, which is not a planet, but it is a mathematical aspect point that's based on where our actual moon is in relation to the Earth. With all of these coming together, these energies are interacting. So we got Mercury, we've got communication, we've got travel, we've got the Sun, we've got people's ego. You're going to start feeling like there's a lot of ego investment going on in your communication. And once again, with Saturn there might be some harsh consequences. But at the same time, Saturn has a blessing. It is realistic.
So that is the Scorpio thing. But you also said there's something going on with Neptune and Mars?
There is. So Neptune, once again, talking about drinking and irresponsible behavior, Neptune is a very happy feeling planet sometimes, but it can cause us to go a little bit overboard, especially when we start combining it with Mars. Mars is a planet of pure masculine energy. It's just the drive. It's what makes you want to just get up and go, no reason, no sense, nothing. And then we've got Neptune, which is all about where we kind of trick ourselves, not maliciously, but because it's our fantasy, it's our romanticism, it's the most beautiful things that human beings can be, and it's also where those things can go wrong. We have those in what's called an opposition. That's that red line right there. You can see them tying together really, really nicely. When an opposition occurs as an aspect, it means that the two planets are having trouble working together. They feel like they're opposing each other, literally, like they're competition. So when Mars and Neptune connect, there's a lot of energy from Mars that doesn't know where to go. But since it's connecting to Neptune, it's probably going to go into either spiritual, artistic, or drug-related realms.
Then you also mentioned that tomorrow there is going to be what something is called a T-square, which is a little bit higher up the food chain of astrological aspects.
It is. T-squares, though, are partially made up of oppositions. We've got Uranus at one end of it, as I said, opposing the moon, which is in the sign of Libra. They're forming a T-square to Pluto, which is the one that is probably the easiest to know because, hey, it looks like a P, right?
P,
Pluto.
exactly.
When we have a T-square forming, what that means is that we've got an opposition, and both planets in that opposition are also hitting a third planet at a hard angle. And it's called hard because hard angles create, they make things happen. You can't not have an energy manifest when you've got a pattern like this going on. The fact that they're pointing at, like the tip of the triangle is at Pluto. Pluto is the planet of transformation, really deep transformation. It's actually the ruler of Scorpio. So with all of these other planets in Scorpio, you know that Pluto is super highlighted right now. With it being at the pinnacle of this T-square, what that means is that the opposition, the forces, that struggle that's going on between the moon and Uranus, all need an outlet. And the natural outlet they're going to find is Pluto, the energy of transformation.
Wow.
Yes. I should probably slow down. Do you have any questions?
No, that's fine. This is a really heavy week, it sounds like.
It is a heavy week. I mean, we've been able to see that reflected in what's going on in the world in general, and
absolutely,
it's going to keep being heavy.
Which is a perfect segue to our segment called Woo Woo in the World. Yes. So we are going to touch every week on some of the crazy shit that's been going on out there. So to get started with that, the Obamacare rollout, please. That was a computer disaster.
Absolutely classic Mercury retrograde issue. I don't think there's any astrologer out there who will claim that it is anything other than Mercury retrograde. But we can really see that Mercury retrograde was going to affect the government in particular this time around because Mercury being in Scorpio and Pluto being in the sign Capricorn are in something that's called mutual reception right now. Pluto rules Scorpio and Saturn rules Capricorn. So these two planets have an extra energy charge in between them, and Capricorn rules the government. With Pluto and Capricorn, we're going to see huge government shifts and changes, and as I said, a T-square forces things to happen. You can't not have change when you get a T-square. So with it pointing at Pluto and pointing at the government, well, get used to this. This type of stuff is just going to keep coming.
Excellent. Well, at least maybe this will mean they'll actually get that website up and rolling. So again, another one that's very popular is Miley Cyrus. But we're going to talk a little bit differently about Miley here. So let's just briefly touch on her.
Yeah, I mean, at a basic level, Miley's at a point in her life, 21-ish, coming up to it, where she's going through something called a Saturn square. This is her birth chart. As you can see, she's got a bunch of planets all right next to each other, including in, wouldn't you know it, Scorpio.
Okay, so that's basically what's happening now. So
yeah.
She's getting hit in all areas right now.
She's totally getting beat up. We've got all these transits that are hitting. Once again, look at, she's got plenty of planets in Capricorn as well. So with the transits that we're seeing as reflected in the Halloween chart, this girl is taking a personal pack and punch for it. She herself is going to be undergoing a transformation. Old news. She's made it very clear to us. We all know that that's happening.
She is changing,
yes,
people.
She is changing. But this is pretty easy to see astrologically. And, you know, who's to say that she isn't right to do it? You got to do what you got to do.
Do what you got to do. No one is getting hurt or dying in this scenario. So as long as she comes out of it okay, I guess that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
She'll be a different person. So, and then finally in our this week, our Woo Woo in the World, we're going to touch on some Jenn, me issues. Because it is Halloween, one of my biggest issues is the Wicked Witch of the West. So we are going to, I can't even look at that picture. That's how bad it is. So we are going to talk about my issues with Margaret Hamilton. I have very deep issues with Margaret Hamilton, to the point where even when I was an older girl, probably an 8, I heard her do a Maxwell House commercial and had a small mental breakdown. So please explain to me for Halloween why it is Margaret Hamilton causes me, and the Wicked Witch of the West causes me at this age still such visceral issues.
Okay, well, I would be happy to tell you why, but to do so, I'm going to need to look at your chart and look at Margaret Hamilton's chart.
Okay, well, I think this is Miss Hamilton's chart.
This is Miss Hamilton. She has a T-square too, as we can see. We were just talking about.
Diggity.
So I happen to have looked at Jenn's chart a couple times, so I can tell you off the top of my head where some of her planets are. Margaret Hamilton, if you'll notice, right down there at the bottom of her chart, has Mars in late Virgo. As I said earlier, Mars is a planet of just pure masculine energy. You know, it's aggression, it's what just needs outlet, it's instinct. So right there in that same spot, Jenn has a Pluto and Mercury conjunction. Very, very tight. Pluto and Mercury together in an individual's chart are going to create a need for communication, but the transformation that comes from that communication can be scary. Transformation is sometimes scary for people. With Margaret Hamilton's Mars right there, charging all of that stuff at her, especially being exposed to it very, very young, it felt violent. Downright Mars, masculine, forced, not a choice, violent. And likewise, scarring, transformative. You don't come out of Pluto aspects, you don't come out of Pluto aspects unchanged. It's just the way that it works. Margaret Hamilton changed you.
She's changed me. My mother can attest to that, and every family member who sends me her card every year for my birthday. Thank you. All right, well, that was our first week. Thank you so much, Lauren, for telling us and sharing with us. Guys, please be careful out there on Halloween. Please, there's a lot going on. Be careful if you're going out drinking. Make sure you get a DD. If you are staying home, make sure you don't OD on the candy, and just, enjoy, but be aware. And that is what we are here for, and we want you to come back and find out what's going on every week. We're hoping to bring on some other guests. We'll talk about some chakras and some Reiki and some crystals, and we're going to talk about all the woo-woo. So if you have some suggestions, or you want to tell us or ask us some questions, or get Lauren to maybe look at your chart up here, go ahead and you can hit us up on Facebook. It's Your Weekly Woo Woo. You can hit us up on Twitter, which is @WeeklyWooWoo. They wouldn't let me have your, it was too many letters. So it's @WeeklyWooWoo, Your Weekly Woo Woo at Facebook. And, I just want to say thank you so much. That was so much fun. Thank you for letting us get our first show off. And I need to just say, hey, Mike and Ferndale at M1 Studios, thank you for actually watching us live. We really appreciate it.
Yes,
so
thank you guys. And just one thing, if you do want us to look at your chart, please go ahead and send your messages, but you're going to need to include your full birth date, the time that you were born, if you know it, and where you were born exactly.
Exactly. Thank you so much, you guys. Your Weekly Woo Woo, Jenn and Lauren. See you guys next week. For more Weekly Woo Woo, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to us on emPOWERme.tv.